So we have the distinct privilege this morning to hear from Eric Oleson, who works with Jonathan Wiggins up in the Rocky Mountain District Office for the Christian Missionary Alliance. Eric is a coach and a trainer of leaders, and he helps pastors like me develop churches and develop vision for those churches. So we're very blessed to have him here. He has his beautiful wife is here, Kathy. We're so glad that she's with us. And I'd just like you to give a few minutes and hear what he has to share with us this morning.
Thanks. All right. I'm trying to, doesn't matter. Good morning. So a little bit about me. I've been a pastor for about 33 years, different sizes of churches and different roles along the way. My wife and I have been married for 33 years as well. And so we've been kind of at this marriage thing for a while and kind of at this church thing for a while. And this last year in 2019, in January 1st, God called us to come up to the Rocky Mountain area, the Rocky Mountain district of churches. And so it's a great privilege. Here's what I do, is I help leaders and churches answer strategic questions for growth and impact, which means, in simple terms, I drive around a lot, and I get to work with awesome leaders like Kevin and Heather, and I get to be with awesome people like you. We love being in this church, love being able to worship with you. It's just a huge joy for us. And so I do training and teaching and coaching and a bunch of different things, but we love being part of this whole church family. Now, in your name, and you may all know this, right? Green River Alliance, we're part of the Christian and Missionary Alliance denomination. So a denomination is a family of churches, and our particular area, we call it a district. So think of it like as a school district, or like if you're a Katniss Everdeen fan, then that will help you get some context. If you don't know who that is, you don't need to know. But those who are smiling understand. A district is an area, all of Wyoming, or let me do it this way, all of Montana, all of Wyoming, and half of North and South Dakota, and half of Idaho. So it's a big area, about 1,000 miles across, and we drive it all the time, all over. 60 churches in that district, yours being one of them. We have about 2,000 churches in the United States, and we have over 20,000 churches around the world. So we say it's the Christian and Missionary Alliance, 3 words. Christian, we're about Jesus. Missionary means Jesus isn't just for us, but Jesus is for everyone. So we have about 700 missionaries all over the world as a part of our church family that you're a part of. And then we use the word alliance because it's just better when we're together. It's better because sometimes I need help, and my church family will be there for me. And sometimes you need help, and so your church family will be there for you. So there's a brief summary of what it is that we're all a part of. So let's see. Moved up here January 1, and from Southern California. Now, Huntington Beach in particular. Lived my whole life in Southern California. So people say things like, boy, I bet you're really glad to be out of California. I get that everywhere we go. And there's a part of me that's glad, but not because of all the reasons that you think. It's not because of, traffic and smog and crime and politics and all the kind of things that people talk about. I'm glad because God said, I want you to come up here. And I'm glad that God gave us direction. And so we moved, and here we are. And all of our family are in California. We miss them terribly, of course. And listen, right now, I really miss that 70-degree weather, right? But when God says, I have something for you to do, you just kind of go do it. And so that's what we're doing up here, and we're glad to be able to do it with you. So I got 3 kids. 27-year-old is married. He and his wife are going to give us our first grandchild next month. Pretty excited. Second son is 25. He and his wife are in Boston. They say they're moving back. And our daughter is 24. She lives down in California. But when my youngest child, my daughter, was getting ready to go to college, we did what some parents do. Not every child goes to college, but as she was going, you have to go to some store, Target or Bed Bath & Beyond or some store like that. Mercifully, I didn't have to go. And you got to get her stuff. So she needs shampoo and all that, but she needs like a soap dish. And I don't know what else you get. What did you guys buy, right? Like a little caddy to carry your shampoo to the shower in the dorms, or all this kind of stuff you have to buy. Again, I didn't have to go. But they came back a few years ago. They came back, and they told me just a little brief story of what had happened. They're in one of the aisles at one of those kind of stores, and they're looking at the shampoo, and this lady comes up behind them. And as she comes up behind them, it's like she's kind of looking over their shoulder, and then she's looking in their cart, and it's like, what are you doing? And so she has this big giant accordion of coupons, right, that some of us use, and she says, "Oh, I see you're looking for herbal essence shampoo or whatever it was. Here's a coupon, save you $1." Like, "Oh, well, thanks." Then she starts looking through the cart some more, and she's like, "Oh, I see you're buying whatever, Ivory soap or whatever it was. Oh, here's a coupon to save $1 or $2 or whatever it was." And it was a little bit uncomfortable, right? When people are looking through your cart, right? "Oh, I see you have really bad foot fungus. Here's a coupon," right? Or, it's like, "Oh, you have like horrific bad breath. Here's a coupon," right? It's like, it felt a little awkward, I think. But, so then they say, they hand her the coupon for the shampoo, and then my wife says, we haven't really decided yet. And she says, "It's okay, just put it on the shelf. Someone will use it." And though awkward, I was struck by the fact that she's going around the store and she's looking just to help people, just to help them save money. Look, I'm not going to do it that way, right? I'm not going to look in people's carts. That's awkward, right? But I got this idea that she's probably going up and down the aisles, and she finds someone and she goes, "Brrr, oh, here you go, palm olive soap," or whatever it was. That she was spending her afternoon not on herself, but on other people. That she was looking to see who she could help or who she could serve. And I think about that with me. Maybe you could think about that with you. Is how much of the hour or the day or the week do I look around and see if there's someone whose life I can improve in some way, someone I can serve, someone I can encourage. And I know some of you are really good at this. And so this isn't going to be like I'm going to hammer on you because you guys are terrible, okay? I'm not going to go there. But I want to take us into a passage and see where Jesus talks about this idea of the difference we can make when we approach a store, a day, a week, an afternoon, whatever it might be, and say, "Jesus, is there some way that I can make a difference in someone's life?" So I want to take a look at this passage. It's in Mark chapter 10. And we'll put the verses on the screen. You can, use your phone or Bible or whatever it is that works for you. But before we read it, I want you to get this little phrase. It's just this. It's for, not from. Okay? For, not from. Because in the grocery store, or the whatever store that was, she had something for people. She wasn't trying to get anything from them. Now let's take a look at this passage. Mark chapter 10. It says this. It says, "They were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way. And the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. And again he took the 12 aside," he is Jesus, "and he told them what was going to happen to him." Now, we don't know why that they were so afraid. We don't know why they were astonished, but maybe it was because Jesus had set this plan. And it's like, uh-oh, Jesus is going. Like, this is going down. So I don't know what, but something is going to happen, and it's going to be extreme because Jesus has decided he's going to fulfill his plan that he had from the beginning. So he says to them, here's what we're going to do. This is verse 33. He says, "We're going up to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man," that's how he referred to himself, "will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise." So it's this very serious, intense scene. He says, I'm going to be delivered. I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be tortured. I'm about to go through this horrific experience. And they totally miss it. They're totally clueless. He says, I'm about to do this. This is the third time he told them. And they have no idea what's going on. It's just ridiculous what they say. Verse 35. It says, "Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, They come to him and they say, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." I know. Whatever, you're condemned, tortured, whatever. Could you take care of us here and do some things for us? It's kind of ridiculous. Like, did you not hear what he said? And so, if I'm Jesus, I'm like, what's wrong with you, right? Is kind of how I would want to respond. And then they ask this question. Did you catch it? We want you to do for us whatever we ask. Does that work in any context? Your kids come up to you, right? All right, listen, Dad. I want you to do for me whatever I ask. Right? Does that work? You go up to your boss. All right, boss, listen. I'm going to ask you to do something, and you have to say yes. Right? It doesn't work in any context, right? If you ask me that, it's a hard no, right? I don't even care what the question is. The answer is no. But they're trying to control Jesus to get him to do what they want him to do. No one else has ever done that in the history of the world. Here's why this passage is here. It's not so you and I could go and look at it and say, these guys are so dumb. It's so that we could look at it and say, we can be dumb too sometimes. We can, instead of saying, Jesus, what do you want? We can say, Jesus, sit down for a second. I'm going to make some demands. I want you to do what I'm asking you to do, and try to somehow get him to somehow to control him or something like that. So this is the third time Jesus has said this to them that we know of, maybe more. You read through your Bible, you can count them. This is the third one. That he says, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to die, I'm going to be sacrificed. Third time he says this to him, and they still don't get it. And I love this passage. You know why? Because it's for people like you and me who we know what we should do, and we don't do it the first time, but the second time, or the third time. And you know what Jesus does? He hangs in with us. He doesn't just write us off and give up on us. So he says, okay, verse 36, what do you want me to do for you? He said. Now, if I was me saying, I'd be like, fine, whatever. What do you want? I don't think that's it, okay? But he says, what do you want me to do for you? Remember, I'm about to suffer and die, a horrific death. And they say, verse 37, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in glory. In heaven, could you give us the best seats? Because I know you're going through a rough time here, but really we want to make sure we get the best seats, because there's 12 of these guys that are following Jesus, right? And they're like, I don't know. It might be that Kevin's going to get a better seat than me, so I'm trying to shove out, Matthew and Luke and, some of these other guys and make sure they don't get the good seat, because I want to make sure I get a good seat in eternity forever. Can you put me first? That's what they're saying. And so you read back in the Bible, this is Mark chapter 10. If you read in Mark chapter 9, these same guys are having an argument. You know what the argument is? Who's the greatest? How do you have that argument? I mean, when you're these guys who have done miracles through the power of God, right? How do you argue on who's the greatest? Like, let's say Kevin and I were arguing about who's the greatest, okay? We're not going to do that, all right? Right?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So, I know Kevin. There's no way that would happen. But let's just say it was. Like, we're going to have this argument. And let's say we were some of the original apostles, right? Kind of the power players in the kingdom. How do we argue over that? Do we say does he say well, I healed someone with a headache. And I go, whatever. I healed somebody who was blind and they can see. I'm the greatest. How do you argue? I don't know how you do that. But somehow they're having this argument along the way while they're with Jesus over who's greater. And so they're always in this relationship with each other, trying to get ahead, trying to be first, all that kind of stuff, trying to get the best seats. And Jesus' world, the community and culture that Jesus creates, wants to create here within us in the church, and will create ultimately on the earth, and has created for us in heaven. It's not a me first thing, right? You know that. It's a community of justice, a community of humble people. It's a community of people of integrity who serve each other. And that's what he's talking about here in the passage. And so they don't quite get it, right? He doesn't dismiss them, that's good. And then he says in verse 38, he's going to give them an answer. So he says, you don't know what you're asking. The seats, right? He says, you don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? He says, you know what you're asking, because you're saying you want to have the seats of the top seats of authority, the top seats of recognition. And he says this cup that he is drinking is like, this is an illustration of his life. So this idea of a cup, if a farmer loses their crops, let's say, and they don't have enough insurance and it didn't get covered, we might say, well, that's a bitter cup for that farmer, something like that. So he says, are you going to drink the cup I drink? Are you going to sacrifice yourself, not just for other people, and not just in a generic sort of a way, but really to experience really pain and even death? Are you ready to do that? Jesus is going to take on God's wrath against sin. He's going to absorb all of it, and he's going to die this terrible death. He's saying, really? Is that, you want to be part of that? Is that what you're asking? They answer, verse 39, oh, totally. Oh yeah, we can do that. We got this. We totally got this. Yes. And then Jesus says something interesting to them. He says, oh, you actually will drink the cup. Not you can, or you may. He says, you will drink the cup I drink, and you will be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with. And so this is some history, and we'll get to the present day in a minute. But he says to them, you actually will go through this. For you will actually follow me. You will actually give yourself in the service of others, and you will actually be sacrificed. And we know this, right? We read our Bibles, and we see in Acts 12, James' life was taken with a sword for his faith. He was killed. And John got to have a lovely vacation on this island of Patmos in the Mediterranean. It was a mine where they're breaking rocks. It was a place of slavery that he went through in his old age. Like, I don't know, 90 years old, and he's given a sledgehammer, and this is your lot. And so they actually did go through what it is that Jesus had prophesied there. And then Jesus finishes this part of the conversation in verse 10. He says, but to sit at my right or my left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. He says, you know what, listen, we're not talking about seats in heaven right now. That's not what we're going to do. But you got to look at verse 41. It's great. Remember, there's 12, right? James and John got to Jesus first and got their names in for the best seats. And so the other 10, when they heard about this, they became indignant. Oh, they beat us to it. There's only 2 good seats in heaven, which stinks for all of us, right? It's like, oh, you're going to be way over in the cheap seats, right? Way over there, there's the nice theater seating, in heaven, and they recline, and they have a little drink dispenser right there in the seat, right? You want some more Diet Coke, you just push it by. It's like the air conditioning is good, and they're like, oh, we're way over here in the terrible seats and the floor is like sticky with gum and drinks that were spilled. Like there are seats like that in heaven is what they're thinking. And we're going to get these terrible seats. And so they're angry, and they're angry just because they got burned. Somebody cut in line, And then Jesus says, all right. You people, all right, come on. Everyone come together. Let's have a chat. Verse 42. Jesus called them together, and he said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them? Do you know how everyone's trying to get ahead by walking over everybody else? You know how that works? And they would have been like, oh yeah, totally. How do we do that, right? And then he says, verse 43, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. He doesn't say, quit trying to be great. Quit trying to do something for God. Quit trying to, don't have any ambition. Just sit around and do nothing. He doesn't say that. He says even that urge to make an impact, to do something worthwhile, that's okay. But he says here's where it should be directed towards. He said it's okay to want to excel. It's okay to even want to do something great. But he says, here's where it should go. So I have to tell you about a friend of mine who I think really does this well. His name is Dell. So Dell is about 70 years old. And when we moved into Billings, Billings, Montana is where we live right now. We were into this house, and they had we had a gas dryer, and they had the laundry area with the electrical hookups. So we had to go out and buy a new dryer, right? Or run a gas line underneath in the crawl space under our house. So we got a guy to come in. He estimated like $450 to run the gas line, and I'm like, I ain't paying $450. So somebody says, call Dell. I'm like, all right, I'll call Dell. And I've run gas lines before, but it's a rental, and you just want to be careful about it. So Dell comes over, and he crawls down into the crawl space with me, and he's like, he's a retired plumber. He looks up, he goes, okay, I think I know what you need. And I'm like, I don't need you to tell me what I need. I don't need you to tell me you know what I need. Just tell me what to do, right? He's like 70 years old, or maybe older, I don't know. So it's like, really, no offense if you're 70, drag the old guy down underneath, right, and in the gravel and dirt and all that stuff. And he's like, nah, I'll ask tomorrow. I'm like, all I need to do is you can just watch, tell me what to do, make sure I don't screw it up and blow up my house, right? And so he's like, yeah, well, I'll have it tomorrow at 1. Okay, fine. It's a super hot day. And Dell is like crawling under the house with me. It's super hot underneath. There's no ventilation or anything. We're sweating profusely. And he's got all the parts, and he's cranking on the pipes, and he's really working hard. And I'm starting to get worried. Like, if something happens to him, can I drag his body all the way across the gravel and up the stairs? That's what I'm thinking underneath this house. And I'm like, hey, Dell, you want me to crank those wrenches a little bit? He's like, no, I got it. And I'm like, okay, And then we get done, and we come out, and I'm like, so, tell me what do I owe you for this? He's like, oh, nothing. And I'm like, no, really, come on. Like, I know this is a real job, and you worked really hard. He's like, no, I'm just glad to do it. And I'm like, what about the parts? What did we pay him? $28 or something he only saved me $425. And as I think about this idea, I wasn't asking Dell to actually do the job and complete it. I was asking him to help me. Make sure I don't do anything stupid here. That's really what I needed. And Dell went so far that I'm telling you the story now. This is the idea that Jesus is talking about. To be the type of people that have the type of relationships where they're looking out to someone who they're close to or not close to. Like I had shook his hand one day at church. That's how well we knew each other before he crawled under my house. To be the kind of people that people will tell stories about us because we said, you know what, I'm here and I want to serve you. I want to help you. What can I do? And how can I make it tangible? So Jesus is going to sum up his life and then give us the direction as well. In verse 45, he says this. He says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served. He's talking about himself. But to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Now, if you're new to church or God and you're trying to figure this out, that's the verse. Jesus came to the earth. He came from heaven. That's where God lives because he's God. And he came down to the earth to experience this terrible death, not for his own sins because he had none, but to take on the sins of everybody. You and me and everybody else. So when he says, I came to serve, that's what he means. So we talk about Jesus a lot because we recognize he died that death on the cross to pay for our sins, for mine, and for yours, even the really bad ones. For all of that. And then what we do is we accept him into our lives, and we then surrender our lives to him. And as that happens, that's when we experience the forgiveness and even truly the ability to be the people who can serve and make a difference around us. So there's the brief summary of it. So we went to the Hitching Post. And we also went to that Godino's, or what was that place called? We went there last night. And, the person comes up to your table, right? And they say, can I get you? All that kind of stuff, right? And we sometimes call them waiters and waitresses. Sometimes we call them servers. But I don't know if serve really works. Here's why. Serving, do you remember the phrase I told you? For, not from. Okay? Serving is when you want something for someone, but not from them. But when someone comes to my table, I really want something from them, right? I want good food that's hot and in a timely manner. That's what I want. But they also want something from me, right? They say, if I deliver food to you hot in a timely manner, I want a fat tip, right? That's this transactional relationship. And the service was great in both the restaurants, so this doesn't come with a story of terrible service. But that's the for, not from. That's how we know we're actually serving someone, is when we I'm just here to you do something for you. I don't want anything from you. That's when we know we're doing this. Now, I have to tell one more story because it happened this morning. We're in this hotel, and I get in the elevator. I'm taking a couple things down to the car, and my wife is, packing up the last things. And I get in the elevator on the 4th floor, and then on the 2nd floor, the door opens. A couple of the hotel staff come in. The door closes, and then like you push the buttons for the floor you want. Well, they were lit, and then they just went dark. And there were still lights in the ceiling. That was good. It wasn't dark all the way. And as we look up on the elevator panel, it has a little picture of an elevator and a person and an arrow pointing out to the door. It's a get out symbol, but we can't because the doors are closed and none of the buttons are working. Oh, how is this going to go, right? And I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking like, okay, how soon do I call Kevin? And then be like, okay, do you want to do a Facebook Live from the elevator? I could do it, Like, I can still preach. I can do the whole message. No problem. We'll do it from the elevator. I'm thinking through all these things. But it didn't matter how many buttons we pushed. They called the front desk. Yeah, we're stuck. And they're like, oh. Like, I wanted, is the fire department coming? Or here's a button sequence to push or something. And there was nothing. So we're just kind of sitting there looking at each other. It was only a few minutes, okay? Some other people have been trapped for a longer time. It was only a few minutes. But we couldn't figure out how we were going to get out. Now, let me tell you why I tell you that story. Sometimes in relationships like marriages, sometimes in families, we feel like we're trying to figure out the sequence of buttons to get unstuck, to get the relationship to start moving forward again. See, this idea of serving, it transforms the person we're serving, but it also transforms the relationships we're with. Because sometimes in a marriage, they're working really hard, they're both really tired, and the parenting takes a lot, and the work, and all those kind of things, and they start arguing about how tired they are. And there's something needs to be done. And they're not sure, like, well, I don't know, I'm pretty tired. Well, I'm pretty tired too, and it sort of breaks down. But see, this works in marriage too. For one of you to say, you know what, let me serve you on this. I'll do it, whatever it is that needs to be done. Sometimes that can be the thing that opens the door, if you will. Sometimes that can be the thing that opens the door in families too. Look, I'm not going to promise that if you serve someone in your family, the decades of bad communication are suddenly going to be fixed. Okay? I get it. I get families. But my dad, who is 86, his girlfriend of a bunch of years, she has this phrase in her cupboard. She has this little phrase, let it begin with me. I kind of like that, Whatever it is. Boy, I wish our relationship was more caring. I wish we could, I wish it was more about us serving and encouraging each other. I like that little phrase, let it begin with me. So, John, who wanted the best seats, who wanted to shove the other 10 guys away, he got the message eventually, and here's what he said in 1 John. So it's 1 John 13, 16 to 18. Do I have that all grouped together here? Oh, I do. Good. Here's what he says. He says, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. And we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And I love that it takes it out of this theoretical realm, right? John, who wanted to get ahead of everybody, is now saying, if you have something, you can help someone. That's love. That's Jesus. That's Jesus stuff, if you can do that. I know some of you are already doing great at that. So this is not a, well, let me tell you, you think you're good, but you really stink. Okay, it's not where I'm going here. So I want to encourage those of you and recognize those of you who already say, I'm looking all the time. So good job, keep it up. But maybe there's a few of us who maybe could open our eyes just a little bit more, who could look around just a little bit more, and to see who it is that we could serve in some tangible, some material way, as it says in this passage, maybe in some way that would be specific. And so let me give you just a couple more things, and then we'll end. So I think of it like this. Some of us tend to plan our day. I do. I plan it on this thing, and I also plan it I have a physical planner. It's all planned out. And the to-do list is there, and when I'm going to get the task done, and all that kind of stuff. And stopping to serve sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, because it's an interruption for me. And so if you're like me in that way, I just want to encourage you with this idea that when Jesus was walking around, it seemed like he got interrupted a lot. Right, he's walking along, and there's this tax collector in the tree, and he's like, hey, I'm having dinner at your house. What do you say? Okay. Right, he's walking along a little further, and this guy, and he's blind, just sitting on the side of the road. He's like, Jesus, you got to help me. And he's like, what? All right. Now, I'm not Jesus. I'm so far from Jesus, right? So are you. So, no offense, maybe a little, but we're not. But there's something about that example. Like, how changes someone's life, someone's day, maybe someone's week, when someone stops and says, you know what, I got somewhere to go, but maybe I can just help one person out here. Now, as Jesus did it, you might say, oh, he's Son of God. Maybe he knew those interruptions were coming. Maybe he planned for them. That's like next level, right? It's leaving a little bit early, right? Leaving enough gaps that in case there's someone to serve, we can stop and probably make their day. And in that way, look at this, right? In this way, we're acting out what Jesus asked. We're being a Jesus to people who need it. And that is for some people, it's going to be the light that will change their day, and maybe change their week, and maybe much longer. The Bible says it like this: let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16. That is, let your light shine means serve them in some way. They go, wow, why are you doing this? And we can say, well, you know what, I'm trying to be like Jesus and help people. And they can go, oh, so it even goes beyond the act in the moment. So look, if you're a student, maybe it's someone who drops something in the hallway and you pick it up. Maybe you know their email address and they were sick and you email them the notes. Right? It can be those kind of things that are tangible as well, even though technically email, I guess, is not tangible. The last thing I'll say is, those of you who are doing well at this, I want you to understand Jesus has noticed. That you can think back and somebody needed something in the community or something in the church community, and you served them in some way. I want you to know Jesus noticed. He notices. And if that leaves you feeling good, fantastic. Like you know what? Jesus noticed. Wow, I feel like I actually did it right. I want to give you that encouragement that you can say, well, I don't do everything right, but that day I got it right. So let's go see if we can have some more days where we do it right. Let's take a minute and pray together. Jesus, we come to you, and we see your great sacrifice, your great service for us. You, the Son of Man, who came not to be served, but to serve, in this whole passage of where you're asking us to serve. So we just pray. We pray, would you give us eyes to see those circumstances, those instances where we can serve someone. Maybe it's going to be in the next 10 minutes, or maybe this afternoon, or maybe this week. But we pray, would you not let us miss one opportunity to make someone's day. Not let us miss one opportunity to really live out your word and to serve, and to, whether it's with our time or listening or something we have that would bless someone. would you just open our eyes to all of those? And then we give you just tremendous praise and worship that you served us, and that we have salvation and hope and freedom and a life that's just filled full because of your presence and because you served us. So we want to give you all the praise and glory for that too. In Jesus' name. Amen. I want this.
Stand together.